you have this amazing story about how you. Why don't you just tell everyone the incident where your town thought you were growing marijuana?
Okay, this is junior year. And I, at least before in my life, and I'm probably still am, a very all or nothing kind of guy. And I need to be fixated on one thing, else I don't exist properly. Okay. And so every time running would go south in high school, which was very often because I was hurt for 3 years, just about. And I would get back and then something would happen. I get back and something would happen. I get back and something happened. Every time something happened, I get down in the dumps, sad in my sorrows, but I'd find something that I could just invest everything into. So I became a stockbroker for a week. I became a Clash of Clans expert for a week. I became an organic vegetables grower on the side of the prairie path for the week. And so for whatever reason, I'd wanted to start a garden and I had no relationship with my parents. So I couldn't just say, oh no, did you disappear?
No, I'm still here.
Okay. I had no relationship with my parents. So I couldn't just say, can I start a garden in our backyard? I was terrified to say. I went for 3 months without speaking to my father. And anytime I spoke to my mother, it wasn't very good. And so I was scared to ask them. So instead of just starting to plant stuff in their yard, or maybe I did, but quickly was shut down. And so I was like, what's the next best thing? And so in my town, there's a thing called the Prairie Path. It's a great thing. It's a gravel limestone path that goes through the entire town, through for another 15 miles to the east and 50 miles to the west. It's beautiful. It's a home. It's my second home, as Mike Newman would call it. And so there I was, lost for whatever reason. I needed a garden at that moment. And I went to the prairie path. And, in the portion of the prairie path near my house, the prairie path is what used to be the railroad. And they built the next railroad next to it. And so between the railroad and the previous railroad, which is now the prairie path, there's about a quarter mile of woods. And so I thought, what a beautiful spot for a farm. And so starting with my bare hands like a man should, I started clearing the forest floor in a beautiful spot next to an oak tree with great sunlight, great soil. I cleared that growth, cleared it all up. I had about maybe a 40-foot by 60-foot plot of land that I was going to start with. Only problem is there was a bit of a footpath that ran through the area. And whenever someone would see me back there, they'd be nice, they'd be friendly. One man was with his family and he says, "Hey, Scout, see any wildlife?" And I said, "You betcha, I actually saw a white-tailed deer earlier, maybe two. Got to go that way." I sent them on their way and they were so happy because they had thought I'd been sent by the Boy Scouts to make a garden. And I told the people I was making a garden when they'd stop by. I'd say that. And maybe because I had long hair at the time or I looked like some kind of hippie dipshit, they started assuming things. And during this time, my operation was only getting bigger, bigger, bigger. I'm an engineer at heart, critter. I build things in my mind and then I try to make them happen. And so in my mind, I had designed an entire self-sufficient watering system. I had physically built a shed with tarps and logs and had put in wood planks in and started to take all of my tools there. And I would take a And I didn't have a license. I didn't have a car. So I would bike with a wagon behind me. And then eventually I decided, I need to get another man in on this, maybe two. So I brought it to the first guy, Will. He was kind of iffy about it. I was convinced him, I was like, hey man, if we grow food here, you don't need a job this summer. Think about that. We could make a couple $100 a week and we'd be rocking. Go to farmers markets. We sell to the moms. They're going to love this shit. He helped me for about an hour and then he said he had to go. And so then I went to my next option, which was Jake. And so Jake, who was also on the cross country team, he came out and we started working on it. And he really loved the idea. He's a little like you, except he got tamed early on by his parents. He's got that something inside of him that's kind of like, I want to go sort rocks. And so we cleared it out. We made it even bigger. The farm was even bigger. We rebuilt the shed. I was planning to get tarps the farm was built in between the railroad and then my farm was there. And then there was a very steeply sloping hill. And then the other side was where the actual path was. And so my plan was to tarp off the entire sloping hill and funnel it down into PVC pipe and then cut holes in it where I could just go like this. And then it would water my entire fields whenever I wanted. And I'd collect rainwater that way. It was genius. It was going to work. But that day we went to Ace Hardware and we went and we bought $25 worth of organic vegetables. I think, you know what? Jake bought it with his credit card because I didn't have my wallet on me and I was going to give him cash later. And when you buy something with a credit card, believe it or not, your name goes into the system and it goes on that receipt. And so we went to our shed in the woods where we had been for about 3 days. And now I hadn't gone to school since I got this idea. So for the last 3 days, I ditched school to do my garden. And I'm in the woods in my shed that I built with my bare hands with all of my dad's tools in it, in a garden in the making. And all I had to do was plant. It was my time. And so I start planting. We plant half a field. It's beautiful stuff. We leave for the night. It's dark. I'm coming back first thing in the morning. But there had been a stakeout. And so the cops had been watching us. And they were looking to what we were doing. And the next day they were planning to come after us. And so they were just trying to catch us red-handed. And so at that night, they went out there with flashlights, just looking around in the dark for what the hell was going on. Because someone had given them a tip that a weird guy in the woods was growing marijuana. At the time, marijuana was illegal in Illinois. This was a big deal, especially in this cute little town called Kalen, Illinois, where there's rich suburban moms that say everything to everyone. The cops work the same way. The forest rangers work the same way. Word goes around. Okay? And so they went and they investigated my beautifully built shed. They walked in there. And on the table, they expected to see bulging pots of illicit substances, crack cocaine, heroin needles, hard drugs, fentanyl. But what they saw, organic squash. And they started laughing. And then the next day, I get a call, or I don't get a call. My mother gets a call. And then she goes to talk to me. And she says, Mrs. Kasowitz called. the last name of Jake, and you need to go over to their house right now. Someone is coming to see you. And I said, huh? I'm going to my garden. And she said, no, you have to go. It's a police officer. And I said, huh? And so I went over there. And what had happened was the receipt. They'd found the receipt for the garden. The garden supplies that we had left there. Idiot move. Stupid move. Can't be blamed on either of us, but I mean, idiotic. And we went. And I went over to his house, and on their porch was their mother and father and him. He looked scared. These parents, they're something else, man. They're something else. They're strict. They won't let you get away with shit. I know that kid. I know he had a bit of a morality problem at one point. Not like a bad thing, just, didn't like listening to his parents, and they like burned it out of him. Punishments, shoveling, sorting rocks, kind of thing. And so I was there.
I don't remember the belt.
I don't think it. I'm not going to say it's physical. I have no idea, but like you wouldn't see him for a while, kind of thing. He'd be locked away, and they're trying to fix this kid. And so, I was a little bit of a troublemaker almost, but in a weird way, in a way untraditional. I wasn't just doing drugs or alcohol or skateboarding. I was growing organic vegetables in the woods. And so the police officer comes by, and he's a forest ranger actually for the county. And he looks really dweeby. He looks like he's wearing a costume of somebody that's at Yosemite wears. And I'm like, oh, okay. That's what we got. And so I'm like, oh, yeah. Jake's still scared shitless, though. And he walks up to us and he just gives us this, like stern talking to. He's like, guys, this is wrong. We thought you were growing weed, which is hilarious because you're growing organic vegetables. And, because it's not weed, we're going to give you community service. So you're going to have to do 25 hours of community service. And he kind of went on his way and he gave us this paperwork. Now, Jake did that community service, but to this day, this guy never did it. And what's funny is 2 years later, I went to a forest preserve at dusk with my brother and my sister and my late dog. And we went to a field that used to be a horse track. And it's now a forest preserve. And we went out there and we were having a good time. The dog was running. The dog doesn't get to run enough because she lives in the suburbs. Grand time. And we walked back to the car, and waiting at the car was a forest ranger. And I say, shit, guys, don't say anything to him. Just walk into the car. So I was driving. They're like, okay. Because they're at this point, they're like 14 and like 10, right? And so we do that. And then he looks at me and he's like, hey, I remember you're the guy who grow organic vegetables on the prairie path, and we thought it was weed. Everyone talks about you. Yeah.
Still haven't done those 40 hours.
No. I'm a fucking rebel, critter. I'm a rebel.